American composer Margaret Bonds did not compose her setting of W.E.B. Du Bois' Credo because of a commission. At the time she composed it, she had no interested performers lined up. The conclusion is that she set this text because it inspired her and because she believed it would eventually find a public performance. Based on letters to her friend Langston Hughes, we know that the work, at least in its piano vocal score format, must have been complete in the summer of 1965, because she spoke in a letter to Hughes about trying to interest a conductor in performing it. In October, she mentions that these plans did not come to fruition. In 1966, she mentions working on the orchestration and talking to another conductor about presenting it. Finally, in November of 1966, she tells Langston Hughes that it will have its premiere with piano on a program of her music in 1967, led by conductor Frederick Wilkerson. She writes, "And then, I guess you know about Frederick Wilkerson's program on February 11th in Washington. It will represent a cross-section of some of my best produce. I would say that 3 dream portraits are yet undiscovered. I know that they represent the kind of creation that may never buy the creators a herring in themselves, but then, since a career is a matter of accumulation, they have an extremely important function. Everything on the program is important. A new piece with poetry by Etienne Grillet, Cheney, Frost, Millet, spirituals. I think, however, that W.E.B. Du Bois' Credo will be the star. It's a very serious piece in the American idiom. It has some lines that are controversial, but I'm sure every line contained is universal truth, and with my universal language, music, the public will hear." End quote. In April of 1972, Bonds knew that Zubin Mehta and the Los Angeles Philharmonic had started rehearsals of the Credo, but she sadly died that month and never got to hear that performance. The performance on May 21st, 1972, only included 4 excerpts of the 7 movements, and according to the LA Times, which described the music as simple, lush, and lyrical, it was interspersed with rousing gospel songs on similar texts. The article in the LA Times is in fact quite fascinating and demonstrates that the problems of 50 years ago remain today. The critic, Martin Bernheimer, who incidentally won the Pulitzer Prize for Criticism in 1982, writes, "Originally, Sunday's concert by the Los Angeles Philharmonic at the Dorothy Chandler Pavilion was to have been a tribute to Malcolm X. But as a daunted Zubin Mehta admitted to his audience, there arose static on both sides. He was referring, presumably, to the white right as well as the black left. Ergo, the program became a safe, if not foolproof, tribute to black music. The intentions obviously were lofty, and Mehta took the side of the angels with at least one socio-musico-political observation. It is high time we did something like this at the Music Center. It is indeed high time. The nagging question, however, involves whether our cultural establishment really should be doing this or something else like this. The Philharmonic always has, by default or design, been close to lily white in its roster as well as its repertory. So, for that sad matter, has virtually every other major orchestra in the country. To change all this is an overdue act of nobility. To change it by devoting a single, haphazard, post-season concert to black music and/or black musicians, however, smacks somewhat of musical tokenism, the same sort of tokenism which is reflected in the personnel of our orchestra. It contains, after all, only one Negro player." End quote. Bernheimer's observations about the difficulty of reckoning with the embedded white supremacy in classical music culture are just as timely today as they were in 1972. Margaret Bonds, however, had something to say, at least about the racial background of the musicians who performed her work. In 1960, she wrote to Langston Hughes about her art song setting of his poem, The Negro Speaks of Rivers. She was friendly with the white mezzo-soprano Beatrice Krebs and said, "Out with Beatrice Krebs, know her, who adores The Negro Speaks and says she's going to sing it. I'll love it when more singers who are not Negroes recognize the universal message in our songs and sing them far and wide. It's happening more and more." W.E.B. Du Bois' message in Credo, that all people are related, quote, varying through time and opportunity, in form and gift and feature, but differing in no essential particular, and alike in soul, and the possibility of infinite development, end quote, is surely universal. And Bond's tender and thrilling setting of these words will touch everyone. Bonds would surely be thrilled that the Baroque artists of Champaign-Urbana are sharing this work with their community.